me to one of the first questions we've gotten here, Tim. So this is, I guess, I'll ask you as well because it was directed towards me because my bold forecast for Charlotte was basically 3 to 6 inches. So the question is, Brad, your bold forecast is giving me hope. Do you think that 3 to 6 inch total will be over several events, or are you thinking just 1 to 2 snow events? So the simple answer is, scientifically, I think it will be multiple events. But if it's just one event, I still verify. So that's the great thing about it. But honestly, if you were to hey, Brad, what do you think? I think it could be. I really think 1 to 3 storms that might be stretched out. But honestly, we could be above average with just one good storm, Tim, because our average is only 3.5. And I've certainly seen it in the past. You get one good track and the cold air sinking up, and you get a 3 to 5 inch snowstorm, and that puts us above average for the year in the season, and it's only one storm. What are your thoughts? Do you think multiple events or maybe just one big one?
I tend to agree. I think with the way things are setting up this year, I would always favor, especially for Greensboro, and that's probably one of the biggest climate differences between Greensboro and Charlotte, is the snow is way easier to happen up here.
Yep.
And you could say the same thing between Greensboro and Mount Airy. It's easier to happen up there, of course. Everyone is very different in the Carolinas, but I would also favor multiple events of snow for our area, but remembering it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
And within our county-wide area, boy, if you live Asheboro South, you probably are usually on the lower end, but to the north, you're on the higher end. But I think multiple events is a decent opportunity. And I see James pulled this up. This is always a fun graphic I like to kind of go back to, just looking at history, how much snow we've had around here for Greensboro and the Triad area. The month-by-month breakdown is fun to me just because you look at when it tends to fall. December is our 4th snowiest month around here. So March actually leads the way, which is a much warmer month historically than December is, but you can get some big ones, and we've had just enough big ones historically that it kind of weights it in that favor. So it's interesting.
Yeah, we use a similar chart, Tim, and I love that chart because our winters here, for us, at least in Charlotte, December's not a big month for snow. There will be an occasional one. We'll all remember a big one because it's around the holidays. But that's why I always say don't count on a white Christmas because it's very unlikely for us to get snow. That's like a generational type thing. Happens about every 30 years, and then it doesn't happen for another 3 years. But what's interesting, our biggest snow dates are late February, early March, which is kind of similar to Greensboro. In fact, a couple of years ago, I started pouring the calendar days, what date on the calendar had the most snowfall on that date over multiple years and storms. It's March 2nd in Charlotte. That is the snowiest statistical day of all of the days. And it's kind of weird. People give up on winter too early sometimes, Tim. It's like December and it doesn't snow on Christmas, and they go, it's never going to snow. It probably shouldn't snow by then. It's really going to be February and March when we see our snow. And so I've always seen those dates where man, it's late in the season where you see those events. So we had a question about accuracy. So James, let me see that one. This is a great question. So I do go back and look. And last year I did verify, thank goodness. But statistically, to put this in, I've done this 21 years now. I'll have to recalculate it. But last time I calculated, it was about 65%. That's not great, but I'm okay if I get above 60% on a seasonal forecast. I'm doing something better than a coin flip, so I'm pretty happy with that. It's not the Farmer's Almanac, apparently, which is 80%, which we can never prove.
Shots fired, Brad.
But I'm pretty diligent. I look at, is it above, below? And the last couple of years, I've done the bold forecast, putting a range just for Charlotte for fun. I'm not so keen on verifying that. I just want to know if it's above or below. And if I verify, I'm basically, over my 20 years, it's been about 65% of the time. I've had some big busts, but last year was actually a pretty good one for me. Considering we had 2 years with no snow, the fact that I forecasted snowfall was pretty amazing by itself, Tim.
Yeah, and we're in a different world now. We're maybe not, I guess we're always snow thirsty, right? But last year, boy, we were coming off that big, long stretch. For us up here, we were 1,000 days without snow, which is only the second time that ever had happened. So at least we got something last year.
Yep.
I do feel like the vibe and the overall impression, if you go man on the street, people still say we haven't gotten a good snow in quite a long time. And That's the perception, whether it's reality or not. The last big one, at least, around here, and maybe you remember as well, was for us the 2018 snow, which at this point is like 7 years ago.
Yeah.
But December of 2018, and this is a winter, just like Brad was saying, it wasn't all that cold of a winter.
Nope.
We had very few events. In fact, for us, this was the only
That was the only
winter
event for us that year,
had.
too.
And it was just a whopper. I mean,
Yeah.
for Charlotte, not so much, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of a little bit low on the totals. But all you had to do was ride up into Burke County or something, or up
Yeah.
by Hickory, over a foot. Greensboro, over a foot. One of our biggest daytime 24-hour snow totals.
Yeah.
Boone was over 18 inches. I mean, this was a total whopper. And it was all snow for
Yep.
most of those places in the foot zone. There wasn't a lot of sleet or mixing. So I think for most of us, if you're a snow hound, you're remembering, all right, that's the one I want again. That's
Yeah.
like your Hallmark Channel storm before the holidays.
That one sticks in my mind because you're right. Charlotte didn't get a ton of snow. We had snow, but our northern counties, Interstate 40 corridor up towards you. I remember at the time telling people, this is a pretty big deal. We don't normally get snow like this early in December. And that was an all-timer. That really was. And it was funny, Tim, because I remember that year, I think my forecast was for slightly below or maybe near average. And that storm happened. Everyone goes, oh, you're going to bust your forecast. But as you just talked about, and we joked, that was the only storm of the entire year. So I ended up verifying, and it all came from one single storm. So that was a weird year. That was, I mean, people were convinced, Tim, that because it snowed on the 8th and 9th in December, that we were going to have this hellacious winter. And it actually just got warmer and warmer, I felt like, as the winter went on. And people were like, yeah, remember that snow back in December? And we kind of all forgot about it. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. The other winter that sticks with me, and I talked about it in my forecast, Tim, was 2010-11. I'm not sure, I didn't look closely at your graphic, but what did you guys have in 2010-11? Because that was a really peculiar year where it was a La Nina. And we had the snow here was 6.1, which is above average. But I remember more the cold. I think those 3 months, December, January, February, for Charlotte, the average temperature, not the high or low, the average of both, was below 40 degrees for all 3 months. And we hadn't done that since like the 80s. It was in crazy cold winter.
That was a really cold winter. So kind of if you go back, and last winter, by the way, for us was our coldest one in quite a few years, just because
Yeah.
it had been so warm for a while. But you're right. We haven't had a winter as cold as 2010 and 11. Since then, we were in the 30s for average temperature around here, 38 degrees. All the months were quite cold. It wasn't particularly snowy, in terms of, well, if we look back here, I'm seeing about 10 inches for us. So it was about on our average, just a little bit above. We've had some good ones after that since then, but the cold, I think, was the big story that year. And it goes to show you can get that in La Nina winters. You can get that. There are always exceptions to the rule. We look at these data for, El Nino or La Nina. It's not like, oh, that's the answer. This is the way it is. No,
Yeah.
there's always exceptions. And we haven't even talked about, the snowfall in Russia and Siberia, the QBO or any of these things, the eastern phase. These are not things that we've incorporated today, right now, but there are so many other things that we're looking at when we're putting these things together that kind of muddy the waters a little bit for winter.
Yeah, and those are always the wild cards, like, those short-term teleconnections that are 1 to 2 weeks out that those can always throw you for a loop. Those are hard to predict months in advance. And I remember 2010, that's really what happened. That negative NAO and the blocking pattern just took over and it got cold. I just remember those winters. We had 2 back-to-back pretty cold winters, and primarily because I had a water line freeze from my house to the meter. One of those horrible things, you see water coming out of your front yard and you realize, I've got a broken pipe. So it was such a prolonged cold snap that caused those issues. So, James, what other good questions we got? I saw a good one about Christmas in La Nina.
Yeah, I decorated this graphic. What are the chances of having a white Christmas like the one in 2010, Brad?
Oh, that was Charlotte's White Christmas, and I think so many people remember that fondly. The other thing I remember about that, I think I went on a limb and forecast snow like 7 days out. And I not that I was forecasting them out, but I said, I think we could have snow on Christmas. And I was sweating that one because someone in our web department decided to put the headline, Brad guarantees snow for Christmas.
Or your money back.
And I was like, oh my gosh, that's not what I said. And so I was sweating that one, and it was a weird day. It snowed from west to east. It took all day for the snow to get here. But that year, I think every spot in North Carolina had snow either on Christmas Day or the day after, which was something that is rarely seen. So I will tell you honestly, my opinion on Christmas Day snow, it's not something that happens here. It's only happened 4 total times in our recorded history. And the fact that we had one in 2010, Tim, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think it's like hitting, the pin head of a nail or something with a shot. It's just too hard. It's just one date on the map. And so I think people wish for that every year, but it's probably something you shouldn't really wish for.
It's so hard to do. And I remember that when I was in Wilmington, we got flurries at the beach. It was probably after midnight, I guess. It was really late. But it was a remarkable event and something that doesn't happen all that often. But sometimes you can catch lightning in a bottle. Speaking of Wilmington, their biggest all-time record-setting snow, 1989, Christmas. So it does happen sometimes. And you never forget it if it does. But there's a reason you never forget it, because it doesn't happen all that often.
Yeah.
I would say, based on the way things look, at least for my area when I was looking at some of these analog years, it tended to seem like a lot of the weak La Nina winters favored a cooler December and then kind of, stabilizing a little bit after that. So we'll see. Some of those next couple of weeks, the longer range models that we're looking at, they're kind of setting that up. So, once December turns, it does look like it'll start to feel like winter. Will we have those at-bats? Will we have those storm systems? That remains to be seen. But I think we'll have our chances, and that's about the best you can hope for.
Yeah, one of my favorite stats for Christmas around here is it's been 70 more times on Christmas Day than we've had snow on Christmas Day. So probably not something I would be wishing for on Christmas Day. Yeah, you mentioned late season. I want to bring up this one thing that I talked about online, and I'll be posting my forecast later tonight, is late season La Nina. I'm talking winter into spring. And Tim, this is something we've seen across the Mid-South and even into our area. La Nina winters tend to end with severe weather, and sometimes getting severe weather early in the spring. When I'm talking, it was like February, March time frame. So I think that's one thing to watch out. It's not really winter weather related, but La Nina winters tend to have severe weather towards the tail end in spring. We get an early start to the severe weather season. So that will be another trend I think we should watch out for, because we've seen some big tornado outbreaks in La Nina winters across the South. So I would be really interested to see if that happens this year.
Yeah, and that can be a big concern, of course, too, as we go into March. So something to keep an eye on as well. I see James pulled this up. These are my silly snow rules. Rule number 1 is just it's hard to snow in North Carolina. So consider your sources. Be careful on social media. There are a lot of places you can get your info. We would encourage you to find your friendly local meteorologist.
Yes. I'm sure we'll get tons more questions, but thank you guys for tuning in. WCNC Plus continues right after the break.